A couple of years ago, a viral meme was released on social media asking the simple question: would you rather be stuck in the woods with a man or a bear? Inevitably, 31% of women said they would rather be stuck with the bear, which led to a whole new gender spat on social media. Well, women who answered the bear could be seeing their choice fulfilled, except it's going to be a Russian bear, bearing, if you pick the vet pun, an AK-74. You see, there aren't enough young men to fill the numbers needed to fight a country like Russia. Or, if you can imagine, Russia and China combined. And the reason for that is the number of conceived terminations. Yes, the A word. According to the UN, the live birth rate for the UK is 1.4%. That is way below the 1.7% needed to avoid extinction. It should be 2.4%. See our video on why humanity is going extinct across the world. The statistics show that 1 in 3 Gen Zs were unlived before they were born. If you factor in the morning after pill, the death toll for Gen Z could be as high as 1 in 2. And this began to steamroll from Gen X onwards. The self-deletion of society has led to significant shortfalls of men, particularly young men, from which to fight conflicts. And what the Ukraine war is showing is that in the full conflict between European nations, huge casualties occur on both sides. As of early 2026, Russia has suffered over 1.2 million total casualties. Now that includes, of course, both wounded and killed. And the source of that is the UK MOD. Ukraine casualties, on the other hand, include wounded and missing, are somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000. And the source of that is the Centre of Strategic and International Studies. Well, just a note here on terminology. Conscription is forced service. It's not voluntary. You draft it and you have to go. Now, you may think that the UK government wouldn't conscript you or your daughter to fight against the Russians and likely die by drone. But you'd be mistaken. The UK opened up all combat roles to women since 2018. In fact, most of the MOD studies are being to integrate females into the armed services as much as possible. The MOD plans to have 30% of all soldiers female by 2030. As for older women thinking they'll send young women, the average age of Ukrainian soldiers is in the mid-40s. In fact, Ukrainians have refused Western advice to conscript young men under 25. Why? Because if they send their young men, there won't be a Ukraine in the future, because there won't be enough young men to repopulate the country after the war. And what the UK and others are planning is a societal suicide by making it worse, by eventually forcing women into frontline infantry combat roles. Not only has a multiple of studies by the UK and the US shown that women are not physically suitable for infantry roles, governments just ignored them and pushed the agenda further regardless. And why are women unsuitable for infantry roles? Because studies show that they cannot carry the weight required, and nor can they keep up with the men. They get injured more often, and they're just not as aggressive as males are. I mean, let's just be honest. Now, this doesn't mean that women are incapable. No, they just need to look at past conflicts like World War II, where the Russians used women in combat in multiple different roles. But while there were female pilots, such as the Night Witches, tank operators and gunners, mortar crews, etc., they didn't come close in numbers to the men fighting, and few women were actually in any form of straight up infantry roles. Of the 800,000 women who fought in the Russian army and other armed services, 3 out of every 4 were actually in auxiliary roles, such as medics, logistics, doctors, communications or repairs, and other such roles. And let's be clear here, We salute to all those brave women who stepped forward and took up arms and helped the conflict. They're true heroes. But to put this into some perspective, up to 34 million Russian men served in World War II, and somewhere between 8.7 million and 11.1 million, different figures from different calculations, died or recorded as missing in action. Here's my opinion on why women serving in the infantry is a really bad idea. Ask yourself this question and think about it on a societal basis. Do you want your mother, your wife, your daughter, your sister, your niece to come home with her face burnt off, her legs blown off, left paralysed? That's if she doesn't actually return in a body bag. As a woman, do you want to be married for life? Leave your kids behind and return as a corpse because of, well, ideology? Then there's a psychological reason. Men get PTSD from warfare, and that can have a detrimental effect on their own personal relationships and society itself. Sending women to fight will double that. I mean, imagine all those women coming home with PTSD. What effect will that have on their children that are already born, or those not okay yet to be born? Now imagine being a child with two parents. Yeah, suffering from PTSD, both the mother and the father. The consequences for children could be catastrophic. There will be no rock in the home for such children. And think what losing 300,000 or 500,000, 600,000, 800,000 women of childbearing age will do to society. I mean, the population's already crashing. It would just make it catastrophic. I mean, you may think those numbers are actually unlikely, but let's remind ourselves they actually fought that the same in the 1910s before the First World War. And look what happened there. In any future conflict with Russia and China, the number of casualties will be absolutely staggering. Just look at Ukraine, then times it tenfold or even more. And think about this. This war with Russia would actually be fought from the north tip of Scandinavia all the way down to Turkey and across towards, well, places like Afghanistan and Iran. And think how many soldiers are needed for a front line that's, in total around about 5,000 kilometres long. And then there's a termination problem. According to the UN, we're already on the verge of extinction because of womb terminations. Statistics show that 1 in 3 Gen Z are already dead. And if you add in the morning and after pill, it could be as high as 1 in 2 are already been killed. To put this into a worldwide perspective, that is more than 1 billion Gen Z who were terminated before birth. See the video on why we're in a societal collapse. Because of the shortfall of men, women are to be sacrificed on the altar of equality, whether it's a good idea or not, whether they want to or not. You have to remember that women in the 40s won't be exempt. I mean, Ukraine shows up the average age of the Russian soldiers is between 45 and 50. And it's 45, remember, in Ukraine. Now, there will be some feminists who will be probably clapping at the thought of young women on the front lines, showing that they can die just as well as a man. Well, if that's your attitude, you can lead the way. They can face the bear, the Russian bear, bearing an AK-74 and a grenade launcher. Yeah? No? A reminder, conscription is compulsory, it's not voluntary. You don't get a choice. I mean, basically, they tell you you've got to go and you get drafted. And the only conscription outlaws that's been used in history is to plead their bellies, as it did in the past when we were trying to escape the hangman's noose. And this is what female soldiers facing deployment already do, or at least some of them. According to a study from Oxford University, about 25% of pregnancies identified during deployments occurred prior to arrival in the theatre. Then you factor in those who become pregnant during actual deployment in theatre and have to be med-evacuated out. That actually totals 16% of casualty numbers according to US studies. That means 16% fewer medevac placements for soldiers actually injured in combat. And that could be the difference between life and death. It would seem that they should die on the progressive altar of equity. But as the body bags come home, feminism itself will face serious questions about its rhetoric and its ideology, not just by society, but particularly by women themselves. Because the truth is, there are no feminists in foxholes. Feminists' central lie that men and women are the same will be harshly exposed to the glaring light, especially if we actually face defeat. There's a reason why no society in history has ever sent not women en masse to fight in wars, and that is because of societal suicide. Do you know, the best thing to do is not get ourselves into a war in the first place. So young men and young women and middle-aged women and middle-aged men don't face the horrors. Let's not make the mistakes of the past. Let's not recreate World War One or World War Two, and let's especially not get into World War Three for all our sakes.